A little boy was diligently looking for his missing coin on the lawn in front of his home. His mom, who just returned from the grocery store, joined him in the search. After a few minutes of not finding the coin, the mom asked him where exactly he dropped the coin. The little boy replied, "Under the sink in the kitchen." His surprised mom asked, "Why then are you outside looking for what was lost in the kitchen?" He said, "Because there is no light in the kitchen." A problem well stated, they say, is a problem half solved. The first step to recovery is getting the diagnosis right. We continue our second reading this Sunday from the letter of St. James. We said 2 Sundays ago that James is a very practical person. Last Sunday, for example, he challenged his community that no one can claim to have faith if it is not shown in the person's way of life. Today, he is tracing the origin of conflicts to the heart. He writes, "Where do the wars and where do the conflicts among you come from? Is it not from your passions that make war within your members?" As the saying goes, nemo dat quod non habet. That is, no one gives what he doesn't have. A person cannot give you peace if that person does not have inner peace. Before the terrorist is able to terrorize you, he must have gone through a lot of self-torture. And so for James, the disorder in the society can only find help when individuals are ready to go back home and fix themselves. In the gospel passage, Jesus is taking another very decisive step. He has left the north where he was a lot safer and is now facing Jerusalem in the south where the cross is awaiting him. For the second time, he prepares his apostles for what was coming ahead, this time becoming more graphic than the first time. But his apostles were not ready to deal with the reality on ground. They would not even ask him to explain for fear that he would give them more details that would make them more uncomfortable. Rather than reflect on the very important message Jesus was giving them regarding his coming passion, death, and resurrection, they decided to distract themselves with the question of who was the greatest. I get part of what is going on here. I do it too. Matthew Kelly calls it resisting happiness. That is putting away your source of true happiness because you don't want to deal with the hard work. I do it when I have exams to prepare for. I do it when I have papers to submit in school. I do it when I have homilies to prepare. I first try to distract myself by going to look at the latest gossips on Facebook under the pretext that I'm trying to wake myself up, that I'm trying to put myself in the right mood. My plan is to do it just for 5 minutes, then get to serious business. But before I know it, 1 whole hour is gone. Jesus knew they were shying away from reality. He knew, in the words of Kelly, that they were resisting happiness. He asked them what they were arguing about. He knew it himself, but he wanted them to diagnose their own illness. They were silent. It was a silence of shame. The truth about us comes to light when we are before Jesus. It sounded very okay to discuss about who was the greatest when they felt Jesus was absent. But as soon as it was brought before Jesus, they saw how stupid it was. Imagine how different we would be if we do everything before Jesus. But the truth is that nothing we think, say, or do is hidden from Jesus. He knew exactly what they were arguing about. Jesus then sat down, called the 12 to himself, and began to say to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all." By sitting down, Jesus was indicating how serious this teaching should be taken. Rabbis sit down to teach as rabbis. He then brought a child before them and said, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but my Father who sent me." By bringing the child before them, he was challenging them to discover the child in them. He was sending them back home to be the child they were. He was sending them to pick up their original innocence. My dearly beloved in Christ, it is the same message that is being passed on to us today. It is time for us to go back home and get it right before coming out again. As long as we continue to search for our lost coin outside because it is dark under the kitchen sink, we will never find it since we dropped it in the kitchen. As long as we continue to look outside for the solution to our crisis, we will never get it right. Jesus' gesture of bringing the little child before the apostles drew my attention to the cases of abuse of innocent children that has placed the church in a very bad light recently. So many people have become experts in condemning the situation and in proffering solutions. Some have called for a serious review of seminary formation. Some have suggested an overhaul of the process of appointing bishops. Some have suggested the resignation of some priests, some bishops, some cardinals, and even the Pope. I am not here to question anything that has been said by anyone. But there is something I have not heard anyone talking about. At least, to the best of my knowledge, no one has traced the origin of these anomalies to our homes, to the family. No one seems to be calling for a review of how children are trained at home and in their families. Remember that these priests, these bishops, these cardinals, and the Pope were first of all born and raised in their individual families and homes. One of my professors in the seminary would say to us in those days, "My dear seminarians, my primary concern here is not to form you to become priests, but to become human beings. There are already so many priests out there, but very few human beings. I don't even care if you are Catholics or not, Christians or not. I just need you to become human beings, and the world will be a better place. Unfortunately, I don't have all it takes to make you human beings. The main job was supposed to have been done in your homes, but I am now a victim of the failure of some of your families." Based on how we treat each other as fellow human beings, we have become worse than lower animals. We do to each other what lower animals would not even do to their own kind. My dear friends, if your pastor is not doing well today, can you confidently point at a child you are training who would become a better pastor tomorrow? If your bishop is not being a true shepherd, based on the way you are bringing up your child now, can that child become a better bishop tomorrow? If the president, the governor, or the mayor is so bad today, how are you training your child to become a better replacement tomorrow? It is not just about the seminary, not just about the Curia, not just about the Vatican, not just about the political party. Let us go back home and be sure that those coming from our homes are first human beings. At the death of Senator John McCain, I kept listening to the different testimonies about him, and I couldn't figure out whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. Based on the testimonies coming from all sides, it was difficult for me to say if he was a Democrat or a Republican. But I could definitely tell that he was a true human being. May God rest his soul. My dearly beloved in Christ, the journey inward is a very difficult one, but it is a sure way to true happiness.